Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Coggins, and I am the founder of the Illustration Initiative. Today, I'm here speaking with Anny Chen, who's based in Paris, France, and she's here to speak with us about what she's been doing to share tips and information with other illustrators and a little bit about her own career. And we're really excited to speak with you, Anny. Um, do you want to just introduce yourself a little bit about, how you got into illustration in the first place and how you got to where you are today with this?
Yeah. So thank you, Emily, for having me. Let's see, how did I get here? So I think my career path into children's illustration was a little bit, I kind of joined a little bit late in the game, so to speak. Before I became a children's illustrator, I was actually working as a graphic designer for 10 years. And so children's illustration was actually a career change for me. And I would say it probably started shortly after the birth of my son in 2019. That's when the wheels started turning a little bit, and I knew I wanted to change from graphic design. There was always this passion for storytelling and illustration that I kind of had set aside for a long time. And I think, like I said, with the birth of my son and reading to him, it sort of reconnected me to that passion from before. So in terms of my path, it didn't happen overnight. It kind of slowly happened as I made this career change. I would say starting in 2021, when I signed up for Lula Rogers's Year of Art School class on her Make Art That Sells platform. That was kind of like the beginning where I began to take this career change a little bit more seriously and start planning for it. And I went into it pretty naive because I had this vague idea that I wanted to be a commercial illustrator, but I didn't really know what markets were out there. I'd never gone to art school for illustration. So it was a lot of trial and error during that year of just taking these different art classes, learning about the different art markets that were available. And then it was towards the end of that year where it became clear and clear to me that, like, yes, absolutely, it's children's books that I want to focus on. Anything to do with really editorial and storytelling and also character design. And so from there, once I finally had my focus, I feel like that was when I was really able to sort of pull all of my work together, build a portfolio, and then eventually sign with my agent. So I'm signed with Maggie at Byers Prinzelli's agency in New York. So she represents me in the North America region for anything related to children's publishing.
Mhm.
So after I signed with Maggie, it wasn't right away that I was getting work. She kind of also had to mentor me, so it was a lot of, it's a pretty long process, I think, being self-taught. Like I said, you make a lot of mistakes along the way. There's a lot of trial and error. But slowly but surely, started getting client work. And now I'm, working as a children's illustrator. And it's exciting to be able to finally, make that dream happen.
It is. It's really amazing. It's fun to watch someone's journey because I think when you're in it in the beginning, you don't entirely know if it's going to work out or not. And there's so many different
Mhm.
phases. Like you're saying, there's like learning, and then there's maybe getting an agent or doing it on your own. And then from there, there's still more learning.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
exactly.
does
I,
continue.
hmm
And so that kind of brings me to my next question, which is one that I think many of our viewers can relate to and probably think about a lot on their own, which is, many illustrators struggle with staying motivated through that whole journey. And,
hmm
especially when the work feels repetitive, if they're feeling like they're doing everything they can, where do they go from here? And I was wondering if you have any tips on keeping people inspired or helping them stay motivated through this process.
hmm Yeah, I think that's a great question. In terms of trying to stay motivated in this industry, for me, I think when you set out, it's really important to know your why, because in this industry, you're going to face, naturally setbacks, rejection. And so sort of knowing your why, like, why am I doing this? Why do I want to be a children's illustrator or work in children's books? That can help you sort of overcome those moments where, you get rejection or failure. So that's one way to stay motivated, sort of, being really clear about why you want to do this. For me, um, it's also just, I love storytelling, like I said earlier, and also learning a craft. So I always go back to, dedicating myself to learning a craft, to getting better at a craft. And that really motivates me because whenever I see my progress, then I'm just, even more driven to take it to the next level and then, keep growing and learning. It's also about being a lifelong learner. I think that mindset, having that growth mindset is really important in order to stay motivated.
I think
Right.
so. Yeah, because
Hmm.
you need to have goals and things
Hmm.
to look forward to along the way, and maybe even reward yourself a little bit along the way.
Yes, I need to get better about that, which is like celebrating when I've actually accomplished a goal.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think we can all probably get better at that. It's a process.
Yes.
Like a lot of times you might not even realize you attained a goal, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Or like for me, it's usually like I've attained a goal, but I'm already thinking about the next one. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, definitely. And that kind of brings me to this concept I saw on your LinkedIn that you started something called the daily drawing habit. And I was wondering if
Hmm.
you could tell us a little bit about that and how maybe that could help illustrators if they took that on board for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So that actually, I have my friend Adam Ming to thank. So he's also a children's illustrator. And in 2024, on his Substack, which is called 10-Minute Artist, he basically created this drawing challenge where you were to draw every day for at least 10 minutes for the entire year. And so I said, all right, I'm going to try this. And it ended up being a transformative experience for me, just doing that daily drawing. And now, I mean, I'm in 2025 and I've continued the habit because it's just become a part of my creative process. And as you had said, I've written on LinkedIn about the benefits of doing this daily drawing. There are so many. First off, just like filling up sketchbooks.
That's amazing.
So yeah, so these are the three sketchbooks I had filled up for 2024. And then this is now my new sketchbook that I just started for 2025. And that already is very rewarding to see. Um, I think there's so many benefits to daily drawing. One of them I would say is just pattern recognition. I think like if you tell yourself, all right, every day for as little as 10 minutes, I need to fill just like one page of my sketchbook, that compounds, that adds up. And you start to see patterns in terms of like what you decide to draw, because it's kind of a free for all. You can really draw anything that you want. It's your sketchbook. But you start to notice patterns. Oh, it's funny. I always draw faces, for example, or I'm always drawing food. So it's a great way to unlock your personal style in that sense too. You also just get better at drawing. So I would use it almost like a gym, like a workout. Like, okay, I need to practice drawing buildings, for example. And then I would just dedicate, a few days, 10 minutes at a time, just drawing buildings. And then that also ends up becoming like your own personal library of reference. So the next time if you need to draw a building or a car or a cat, I don't know, whatever it is, for a project, you can go back to your own sketchbook and say, oh, yeah, like I had done a page of these, because you can also turn the 10 minutes into I'm just going to draw like 10 mugs or 10, I don't know, anything, dogs, right? It's like, it's totally up to you, but it's a way to record your own drawing, and that's really powerful for me. Just having that daily practice. And then the last point I would say is also, it becomes almost like an endless idea generator because for me at least, I've had characters that kind of just emerged from my daily drawing habit.
Mhm.
And sometimes I'll draw a character and I'll leave it alone in my sketchbook. Like I won't look at it for a month or so. And then one day I'll flip through it again and be like, oh yeah, there's something about this character. And that literally happened to me last year where it turned into a whole manuscript. I took two characters that I had started in my sketchbook, turned them into character studies, sent them to my agent, then eventually like turned it into a manuscript, right? So it's baked into my creative process now, this daily drawing.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I highly suggest everyone do this. It's like any muscle. If you keep working it out, it gets stronger, like the gym,
Yeah.
metaphor. And it's
Hmm.
kind of the same for writing. I mean, for people who also want to be an author and an illustrator, you probably could do a 10 minutes on the writing side of it too.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah, for
And it would
sure.
do that. And I love that you had a character from this that came out and ended up being
Hmm.
one that you could use in a manuscript because
Hmm.
I think that's what I've noticed a lot with illustrators is that they're illustrating so many different things and then one day they realize one of those little characters does have a whole life of its own that they want to explore. And this is why I think characters are so important in a portfolio is because there could be a little character that you create that then an art director or an editor sees and they're like, no,
Hmm.
what is the story there? And I always tell people you want people to wonder more about your character.
Right. Yeah.
You want them to be creating a spark in someone so that when they see even just a sketch of it, it doesn't even have to be a full color character, even just a sketch of a character that has some kind of life to it, be it another little character with it or whatever, and that can
Hmm.
bring a whole life to it. So I think that's really exciting and that brings me actually perfectly to my next question, which is about character studies, because you talk a lot
Hmm.
about character studies in your different posts. And I really believe character studies are so important, and a lot of
Yeah.
people try to skip them or they, just want to create a lot of different characters and they're not really focusing on one. And I do think it helps for so many reasons. Um, from my perspective, which is more probably the art director side of it, I see character continuity. So, it just on the most base level, it just proves that you can illustrate one character across a book.
Yeah.
You can put them in
Hmm.
these different situations, but I think there's a lot more to that. And I wanted you to maybe speak a little bit about that and speak about, if you don't mind, how people can get into character studies and what can
Hmm.
make them a better character study.
Yeah, absolutely. I think definitely if you want to do children's books, like you say, you have to prove to art directors that you can draw a character over and over again, keep them consistent throughout an entire book. And so that's what that character study does. It kind of shows, your character in a range of emotions and poses. But I think oftentimes for beginners, that seems like such a challenge. And I think that's why there's always this obstacle to do it because when you're just starting out, you don't have maybe the technique yet. And so just drawing one pose is hard enough. So then the idea of having to do that again 5 or 6 times on the same sheet can be very scary. So I know when I started out, that was definitely a huge obstacle for me. And I think that there's no shortcut, unfortunately. I think the only way to get better at drawing is to draw a lot and to draw every day, which is why, having this daily sketchbook is part of that process. But there are certain things that I've learned along the way that I think had I been taught these things sooner, it may have helped, it would have sped up the process. And these are some of the tips that I actually share on my LinkedIn. Um, for me, one of the main things that I see, and myself included when I was a beginner, beginners struggle a lot with getting the character age right, you know, and that's really important for children's books. It's like knowing how to draw a character and making sure that they look like a baby if they need to look like a baby, or they look like a preschooler or a toddler or, age 7 and 8. And one tip that I learned that really was a game changer for me was just understanding like proportions of a face. There's this tip that I learned, which is called visual weight marble theory. And it's basically the idea, if you imagine the eyes on the face as being marbles, and then there's this line connecting the two of them. And this line, where this line is where the nose is placed. So if you imagine the younger the character, the eyes are farther apart and the nose sits higher, like almost in between the eyes. And as they get older, you push them closer, and then this line drops down and the nose drops down further. So if you want to make just understanding that was a game changer for me because before I'd be like, why does my character not look young? Like I just don't get
Mhm.
it. And then once I learned that principle, it was like, everything became a lot easier because then I understood, okay, it has to do with this relationship, the eyes to the nose, and not so much like the size of the eyes or, because I find that a lot of times as beginners, we focus a little bit too much on like, oh, maybe it has to like have humongous eyes to look like a cute young child character, but that it's actually not that. It's all about the proportion and the
Mhm.
placement of those features on the face. So that was one tip, for example, that had someone taught me that in the beginning, I think it would have saved me a lot of struggle.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And there are other things too. For example, I think being self-taught, another challenge that I see a lot with beginners is not knowing how to simplify your design. I think because when you're self-taught, there's this feeling like, oh, I need to draw realistically.
Mhm.
Like I need to prove that I can draw the human body or the human face realistically. But that's actually not necessary in children's illustration. And oftentimes, a character will actually be more appealing. I mean, unless your style is realistic, but if you're not technically there to do like a really realistic portrait, then you're better off going simpler and understanding how to simplify your character design was again another game changer for me once I understood, how to do that. And then it just sort of made character design, drawing children a lot easier for me.
When
So
you
yeah.
when you realized that, was it something that you just learned by doing more and more character studies, or did you like take some classes, or did you just read information about this? How did you, as a self-taught
Yeah.
illustrator, learn that?
So I share this on LinkedIn a lot, but there's a book that literally taught me everything I need to know about character design. I don't
Oh
know if you
yeah.
can see it, but The Fundamentals of Character Design by 3D Total Publishing. Like I cannot recommend this book enough. And really any of their books from 3D Total Publishing are
Mhm.
just such great resources. So I'd say if you're self-taught, it's worth the investment. To at least buy one of the books, and especially for character design, the fundamentals of character design is just such a great resource. The other thing is, like I said, when I signed with my agent Maggie, actually, she spent a few months mentoring me.
Great.
And there was one comment that she had made on one of my characters where she was like, your style isn't realistic, so less is more.
Mhm.
And that was like a light bulb moment for me because it seems obvious, but it's not. Like less is more, meaning like knowing how to edit yourself. I like how do I say this? Like, looking at your character as you're drawing it and being like, is that line necessary? Probably not. Like, really just figuring out how to streamline your character
Mhm.
so that you get down to the essence of that character is something that, I think my agent Maggie helped me see the problem, but then in order to solve it, still required sort of just doing a lot of drawing. And that's again where this daily drawing habit is also helpful because I do a lot of observational drawing in my sketchbooks, and I draw a lot of portraits, so I'll just find reference images online and I'll just draw these portraits in my sketchbook. And what's nice about it being only 10 minutes is that you have very little time.
Right. Hmm.
So then it kind of forces your hand
Yeah.
to just find like the essential lines to capture, a person's face. So I think with that process over time, I started to just get better at, drawing faces, knowing like what to exaggerate, how to play with the proportion to get, an emotion across or a certain personality across as
Definitely.
well.
I think
Hmm.
this is such a great thing because I think people could use it in different ways. You could do something like you said, really focus in, like you said earlier in this conversation, on figuring out drawing buildings, or maybe like this, focusing on just your character studies and getting those sort of little details right.
Hmm.
Or you could use it to experiment with subject matter that you're unfamiliar with, or something you
Yeah.
feel uncomfortable with. But at the same time, if you're having a bad day, you could just illustrate something you're good at and you like to do.
Hmm.
You can let it be whatever your day is. You don't have to have any expectation. You can come
Right.
in with a plan or you can not. You can just draw what you want. And I think that makes it something that anyone can do. It's totally accessible to anybody because you can do it with your pencil on a newspaper if you had to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, and I think that's really great. And then I always say this because everyone gets nervous like with this topic, but you can do this digitally. You don't have to do it by hand if you're someone who gets nervous about the doodles by hand, but you could also just do it for yourself in a notebook. And it's also something that no one else has to see if you don't want people to
Exactly.
see.
Yeah. I think that's the main thing is, I made the decision to share my daily sketch habit. So every day I'll post a story, but you don't have to.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and that's why it's freeing because you can make really ugly sketches and no one's ever going to see them. They're just purely for you. And that's actually better, when they're purely for you. It's freeing that way.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, there's so many different things that you can do with this. And this kind of brings me to my next question about social media, which is some people need that accountability partner. Maybe they
Hmm.
don't have a real person to be their accountability partner, so they decide social media is that person,
Right.
which is their audience. So every day, you need to create something and you need to be held accountable because you're not feeling so motivated on your own, so you want to share it with people so that okay, I did my sharing, I know I did it, and I want to share this with people and it's some reason to do it. So if
Hmm.
you're that kind of person, someone who wants that sort of social media accountability partner, it's a great way to do that. And then if you're not, you also don't have to, so it's a win-win.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah.
like you said, you use social media a
Hmm.
lot for your work and sharing these tips on LinkedIn and Instagram. And I was
Hmm.
wondering if you could share a little bit about how illustrators can use social media to help their careers or their own process.
Mm. Yeah, so I started writing on LinkedIn I'd say in 2024. Yeah, like May of 2024. And I actually went to LinkedIn because I was sick of Instagram. I was just tired of it. And with all the recent events going on, I think a lot of artists feel the same way. I'm still on there because I have a lot of friends, actually. I've made a lot of friends and there's a sense of community there. But in terms of actually getting work out of Instagram, I haven't had success. I know others have, but I haven't. I've had zero success on Instagram. LinkedIn has been a huge game changer for me. And I would encourage artists to explore LinkedIn because um, it is a professional network. So you actually see where people work, and you're making professional connections that way. So for me, um, LinkedIn was great because I could actually see which editor worked for what publishing house or where, which art director or agent. And having that visibility is very powerful because on Instagram, you're kind of just posting into the void. You're using those hashtags like Lit Art Postcard, but you have no idea if anyone's actually seeing your work. So it can be very discouraging. And everyone has complained about the algorithm, and I agree. It's all, you never know, and it's changing all the time. Whereas LinkedIn, because it's a professional network, you can at least see where people work and make, I feel, better professional connections that way. It's easier to, do cold outreach there again, because you actually have someone that you can message, you know. Um, so I would recommend LinkedIn. And then the other thing for me is I started writing on LinkedIn because I just decided that just posting my artwork didn't seem to be enough because everybody kind of posts their artwork. And it felt like a platform, being a professional platform, it felt like the place where I could add a little bit more to my posts. And so that's when I decided to just start writing tips. And then that kind of just grew on its own. I started to have a following. People were really, they were had a positive reaction to my posts. And it was very encouraging to see that. So, um, for sure. I think, if you enjoy writing, I think nowadays to stand out in social media, it's always it's a challenge to stand out. And so, whatever you feel comfortable with, obviously, but if there's something that you can added value, I would say, if there's added value that you can include along with your artwork, it's worth exploring that because it
Yeah.
could help attract a wider audience.
Definitely.
Mhm.
And like you said, I mean, it's something that I suggest to people too is to reach out on LinkedIn or at least look on LinkedIn because you can actually see who the art director is at the
Yeah.
company instead of
Hmm.
just going into that void of looking at websites who might not, indicate who it is. It used to be when I was an agent and when I started being an agent, you could go on to these websites and they actually specifically said the art director and oftentimes
Yeah.
the email, like at
Hmm.
Macmillan or, for all the different Macmillan imprints, for all the different Simon and Schuster imprints, for all the different
Hmm.
HarperCollins imprints, they truly said not only who it was, but the email. But I think because of the oversaturation
Yeah.
of, information, people being online a lot more, I
Hmm.
do think there are so many more illustrators out there now because of
Yeah.
the internet and because you can do this all digitally that
Mm.
now they've taken a lot of that information off the websites. It's a lot harder to find. And then the only way you can really find it is LinkedIn.
Yeah, it
You
is.
know.
Yeah. And at least on LinkedIn, the algorithm works enough where if you've connected, let's say, with an art director, it will automatically suggest other
Yes.
art directors or editors who, at
Hmm.
other publishing houses. So in that sense, I think it works, its algorithm works better than Instagram.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. It's definitely for a professional format. I say that
Mm-hmm.
Instagram is interesting because yeah, right now I'm not sure how I feel about the whole thing, especially with AI and all of
Yeah,
that. And
exactly.
I've kind of stopped on my own page putting people's artwork up. And I feel bad.
Yeah.
Like I used to put like before and afters and I used to put up all this artwork onto my page and I'm
Hmm.
slowly just it's all gone away. And I'm like, there is artwork out in the world, I promise. But I don't want to put it on Instagram as much just because I don't want to share other people's artwork on there, without their
Hmm.
permission, but also because I'm just not sure where the future is going with that. And so, like sharing this information and in different ways, and the fact that LinkedIn is a more professional platform for actually networking with these people,
Right.
especially if you're from anywhere in the world,
Hmm.
is a great method to do that. And I always tell people, you're not getting a response and you have gone on and you've connected. I always say phase one is connection. Phase two
Yeah.
is maybe reaching out with a specific, potentially, you know, complimenting a book that you know that they did or something like
Yeah.
that. And then establishing a little bit of a relationship and saying that you're an illustrator looking for work and you really admire their imprint or whatever. That's a good way to do it. But to not feel bad if no one responds, because
Hmm.
as an agent, the biggest thing I've noticed, and I share this as much as I possibly can, is silence doesn't mean no one's watching. No
Hmm.
response doesn't mean no one's watching. And
Hmm.
it sometimes takes a couple of years to get
Yeah.
someone. And it's not because they weren't watching, they were watching. They were just waiting for the right moment that your work or your style actually was right for them. But they did notice. And so don't be discouraged by silence. Just keep going, is what I tell them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really valuable. And the other thing I would add is the follow-up is important
Yeah.
too.
Hmm.
And nobody's going to remember your bad art in the sense that
Uh-huh.
I think agents and art directors expect you to grow and to evolve. And so maybe I'm speaking more for the beginners and the self-taught. Maybe, in the beginning you're getting rejected, but there's always the opportunity for 3 months or 6 months down the road to reapply or to send another email with new work, showing that you've grown as an artist and to just keep following up. Like that's okay. It's nobody expects you to just get it perfect at the first go. I think you can continue growing and not be afraid to follow up and say, hey, I have new work. This new style, it's evolving. That's totally fine too. And then the other thing is also what I've learned, like you had mentioned, art directors are watching. And I think those timelines in publishing are so long. I've had art directors say, I love your style, but I don't have the right book for you. And that can be frustrating, but it just is kind of the nature of the industry because these timelines are a lot slower. They take a lot longer. So persistence is key.
Yes, definitely true. So this kind of brings me to my final question that I have for you, which is,
Mhm.
both what's next for you and if you could also leave us with some, general advice for beginner illustrators.
Yeah, so right now I am in like the final coloring stage of a picture book that I've been working with author Raven Howell. So we've been collaborating together since end of November last year, and we're now in that final coloring stage. And I'm hoping to finish this book by the end of March. So excited about that. Can't wait to share with the world when I can. I feel like that's just publishing, right? There's so many things you're working on that nobody can see. Um, Another project, again, is also I'm in that contract phase right now with another publisher, but a French publisher, for another project that I'm excited about, but can't say too much about it either. And then another project is just my LinkedIn writing has really taken on. I have a lot of followers, and they've been asking me for a guide to sort of, summarize all of my LinkedIn tips and put it together in this guidebook. So I'm hoping to work on this year and, launching that maybe like late spring of this year. Um, so yeah, those are kind of the projects I have right now on the horizon. In terms of advice for beginners and self-taught, I would say, the ones who succeed are the ones who don't give up. So don't give up. I know that the process can feel really long and really lonely, but I promise you that if you just keep at it, you will see success. And then also knowing what success is, what it means for you, staying open-minded, because I went into this with these ideas about what success meant, and in the process discovered oh, actually, it can come in different forms. It's not exactly what I had thought before. It's the same with the type of work that you can get in this field. I think when you start out, you assume that you have to, be published by one of the big five. It has to be like, a certain, like you got published picture books, and that's it. But there's actually a lot more work,
Yeah,
different types of projects that can be available to you. And so staying open-minded about those opportunities, where they can arise, where they can come up. That's really important too. That is also a way for you to stay motivated, and to be sort of just okay with, you know, trusting the process. I think that's really the key. Trusting the process, not being so fixed on that outcome and how it should look like.
definitely. That's really good advice. I mean, I think you summed it up really well. And if you're looking for more advice, you should really go visit Annie's LinkedIn page,
Thank
where
you.
she's sharing a lot more about, a lot of tips across a lot of different things, actually. So, and I'm thinking that will continue to evolve. So we'll link that down in the description here under the video. And I just want to thank you so much, Annie, for coming and speaking with us. And I think you're helping a lot of people, take that next step and push back whatever they're currently being blocked by. And it's a really great thing. So we'll keep an eye out for this guide, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Emily.
Bye.
Bye.